Welcome to What CEOs Talk About. Do you wonder what CEOs talk about behind closed doors? How they bring their vision to reality? How do they overcome and succeed through adversity? We share that and so much more with each episode. Now, let's get started with the show.
Hello, everybody. My name is Martin Hunter. I am the host of What CEOs Talk About, where we translate vision into frontline operations. Today, my guest is David Ash. He is a lifetime entrepreneur, full-time investor, and an author of a new book called Simple Wealth. You've been an entrepreneur for what? A gajillion years. Let's just be kind. You've been doing it your entire life, which is really, really cool. And you've been a full-time investor for a while now. And then your new book, when did your book come out?
January of this year.
Oh, perfect. Perfect. Just in time for, round 2 of the pandemic, where people have extra time to read books. Speaking of which, for those people who know David, you might not know this, but his nose is in the book continuously. What's that book? Shogun? Was that 5,000 pages? He loves historical fiction. So that's, if you didn't know that about David, good thing you're listening to this show. David, thank you very much for being on the show. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here, Martin.
What is the title of the show for today? What is the topic that you would like to discuss?
Simple Wealth and the Entrepreneur. The theme is reconciling the life of an entrepreneur with personal finances.
Oh, good. Yeah. So tell us, David, what's your story? When does it start?
Well,
back in 1970.
Well, the book that I've just written, Simple Wealth, I think is a great way to tell that story.
Perfect.
I wrote Simple Wealth, which we've released in January of this year, for 2 reasons. Reason number 1 is that I have 2 adult kids, 28 and 30 years of age. And my wife and I were doing some estate planning, and we were looking at the future, and it became clear to me that I might not be around to help my kids when they might need me most when it came to financial, or life advice. So I said, well, I want to make a record of of my very best thinking on all things financial. So when the kids say, hey, what do you think Dad would do? And I'm not around, they'll know my very best thinking on that subject, on all matters financial. But the other reason I wanted to write the book, which I think is almost as high a level of motivation, was that I started out my entrepreneurial journey, as we talked about earlier, in my early 20s. Very ambitious young man. I had no training. I didn't go to university. I didn't come from an entrepreneurial family. So I had no background in accounting, bookkeeping, or even I didn't come from an entrepreneurial background. So I had no mentorship. I had no network whatsoever. So I worked really hard, really motivated, made all the classic mistakes that young entrepreneurs make. Got behind on my income taxes for a number of years, had a small business. That business went out of business. And at the age of 28, I had to declare personal bankruptcy. So here I was, young, very motivated, young entrepreneur, started out in life with nothing, had great dreams for the future. I wanted to be a millionaire by the time I was 30. And here I was bankrupt at the age of 28. I was with my wife at the time. So that was an absolute low point for me, Martin, you can imagine. And at that low point, as a young entrepreneur, I read a book, and that book was written about 100 years ago by George Clason. The name of the book is The Richest Man in Babylon.
Okay.
It's a multi-million copy bestseller. It's a tiny little paperback. And The Richest Man in Babylon is a series of fables and short stories set in Babylonian times that basically communicates the golden rules or laws that govern the creation of wealth. So you can imagine, as a bankrupt young man, didn't know where to start, didn't know where to go. My mind was real open. My very best thinking got me where I was. I needed new thinking. I needed a plan. So I took this little book. I read it. I embraced the principles in it. My wife, I asked her to read it as well. She read it. She thought it was a great idea. The principles that he communicates in that book are very common sense things that we've all read about, we've all heard. Save a percentage of all you earn, save at least 10% of all you earn, of all your earnings, control your expenditures, make your money multiply, those types of things. We embrace those principles. And I embraced them as a 28-year-old entrepreneur, saying, you know what, if I'm going to do this entrepreneurial journey, because by that time, at the age of 28, I'd been in and out of 3 or 4 small businesses already. And if I was going to continue on that journey, I was going to have to learn how to segregate somehow my entrepreneurial adventures and experiences from my personal finances, because I wanted to start a family. I wanted to have a wife. I wanted to have kids. I wanted to have a house. I wanted to have the whole Walton's family experience. But as we know, as entrepreneurs, if you own the business, what typically happens is you go all in. The business starts growing. It demands more money. You put in more money. You work longer hours. And then if everything goes great, awesome. Sometimes it doesn't. And then
sometimes
so then the personal bank account gets emptied, or your corporate account gets emptied. You end up signing personal guarantees. And then you start pushing in your savings, your RRSPs,
remortgage,
and your wife starts getting nervous, and the whole song and dance. So I had to find a way to segregate the two. So this book, The Simple Wealth, was basically a way for me to communicate how I was able to successfully do that. I have so many friends my age. I'm 60. Guys even older than me. They've worked their whole lives, built up good businesses, and then pandemic comes along, or subprime crisis comes along, and they're wiped out. And because everything that they've had has been invested in their business, they're financially wiped out and starting again in their 50s or their 60s. And it doesn't have to be that way.
Agreed.
And if you manage your financial affairs, if you learn how to segregate, one of the best ways of communicating it, I guess, is that financially, I believe, and I communicate this in the book, I believe well, is that there's as an entrepreneur, there's you have two kind of financial pots, or two kind of entities that you're running. You're running, my family's finances, Inc., LTD, family LTD, and my enterprise, whatever that enterprise is that day. And sometimes as entrepreneurs, we all have short attention spans, and that business is changing, right? So that entity is siloed, incorporated, structured, okay, and it's going to demand everything that you'll give it, and you got to learn how to set boundaries. And then you got to have Family Inc. over here, and you got to create boundaries around that, and never the two shall meet. Developing that discipline and understanding that the two don't have to be meshed together.
Absolutely.
Because if they are, the business will take more than you give it. Always.
It will suck it all in. It will suck it all in. There's too many people. So how many times have you seen a CEO of an entrepreneurial business who pays himself less, he or she pays him or her less than their VP of sales? And we go in there and you go, what are you doing? There is no way that you can remove yourself from this equation by paying yourself subpar salary. Oh, well, the money needs to come in. Okay, so let's look at your P&L. P&L is good. Everything's good. And then all of a sudden you go, well, hold on a second. Where's all these assets come from? Oh, yeah, that's my second mortgage. You've not paid yourself back. Well, I'll pay myself back in . And then all of a sudden there's overexertion, there's risk. Even the richest guys that I know sometimes are flying so tight that you go, you've got everything invested. And I think that the biggest lesson here that I think that we can talk about is reconciling, like you said, right? Reconciling that instability. Is entrepreneurs have a hard time putting the line in the sand. And Ryan McKenzie from True Earth, the little tabs there for washing your laundry tab, when they first started their business, he put a line in the sand. He's like, okay, I can't remember what it was, but like 150. If we don't sell 150 of those by July 15th, we're done. We like putting those milestones in are a good way to save your marriage. Your doesn't stop you from being an entrepreneur again. And if you pay yourself a decent salary, then you've got the savings to say, well, I can survive, the next 90 days. And two little people also say, I'll never get a job. Well, you do what you need to do to feed the family. And it's okay. Lisa, another podcast, when she became a mom, she went back to work and then started a business and then went back to work again twice. Yeah. So it's not everybody's like David. Don't think that because David's been a lifetime entrepreneur that you can't go in and out of that situation to be able to reconcile both ends. That's a great idea.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, the one conclusion I came to was that I became unemployable. By the age of 28, I've been an entrepreneur, my whole young adult life. I was a commission salesman, and then very quickly in my very early 20s, migrated into my own little businesses. By the age of 28, I'd been self-employed my working life. I left home when I was 17. So we're talking 9 years already as an entrepreneur at the age of 28. So I was unemployable. So I said, okay, I've got a life ahead of me. I'm 28, like 30, 40 more years of being an entrepreneur. I have to find a way because I said to myself, well, there might be 25 more businesses in front of me. There might be 25 more ups and downs. And I can't take this. I can't start from ground zero. I can't deal with bankruptcy trustees for my personal finances every 5 years if something doesn't go the way that it should. And so I planted a flag and I said, you know what, I had to find a way. And when I read The Richest Man of Babylon, it was really clear. And I embraced these principles at a time in my life when I was at the lowest. So I just want to summarize these principles because for the listeners, because while they may sound simplistic, truth is always simple, Martin, right? It's not easy to apply necessarily, but it's always simple. And so many entrepreneurs, so many of my friends over the years have missed these basic truths. So the idea of paying yourself first, whatever you earn, 10% of all you earn is yours to keep. That's a universal principle right off the top. When I say yours to keep, it means it's not to be invested back in the business at any time in the future whatsoever. This is for when you're old and gray and you can't work again. So 10% right off the top, set aside for you and your family when you're old and gray. Okay. The next one is control your expenses. That's very obvious. As business owners, we know that. Control your expenses. But on a personal level, control your expenses. So embrace the idea of thrift so that you can live within your means, save the 10%. Okay. Then make your money multiply. So that 10% that you've set aside, okay, now this is what I began doing at the age of 28. I'm 61. So that 10% that you set aside, you got to learn how to make that money multiply. So for us at the beginning, I bought real estate. I'd buy single family little rental houses and I'd rent them out. Sometimes I did a fixer up or I'd buy it with a very low down payment, fix it up, sell it. The proceeds from that sale didn't go back into the business that I was running at that time. The business was a separate entity. I looked at the businesses I ran as my job. They were kind of like over here, but the money I saved, the 10% that I saved and invested was being invested for my family's future, for my future and my family's future. So when we were old and gray, when I wanted to send my kids to university or college, that money that we'd have there, if I needed it, would be there. Okay.
So is there a percentage of the percentage? So when you were saying that you made that money multiply, was there a rule of thumb out of that 10%?
No. I think that the underlying principle is that you learn how to make money multiply.
Okay,
and
gotcha.
in terms of what rate at which it's going to multiply will really depend on your acumen as an investor, the market forces around you, the type of investments you choose. So
let me reformulate the question. I didn't ask the question properly. So when you take that 10% aside, right? So you take 10% of what you make $100,000, right? You take 10%, put it aside. Okay. Yeah. You put that aside. When you say make that money multiply, what is your rule of thumb out of that 10%? Because that 10% is for living expenses and all that good stuff, or is it savings?
No, that's 100% savings. So 10% right at the top is so when I say 10% of all you earn is yours to keep, this is money to be set aside to be invested for your future, to multiply for your future. Never at any point are you able to touch that money for any other purpose other than to invest and for it to multiply.
Gotcha.
Think of it as a self-managed retirement savings plan.
Perfect.
Instead of
10%.
Instead of an RSP, it's a SMRSP. Okay, so self-managed retirement savings plan. That's exactly what it is. So 10% right off the top. Okay, set aside, and then if you're in my case, because I had some experience in investing in real estate, I had I was a realtor when I was very young for a brief period of time, so I understood how to buy and sell houses. So I personally focus on real estate. It's a great place to start. So for me, that worked. So I invested in real estate. But now these real estate investments that we did originally, the rental houses we bought or the houses I bought and sold, any profits that came from that were never taken out and reinvested in my entrepreneurial ventures. They were over here and they had to stand alone. They had to survive on their own. So this real estate 10% account proceeds invested in real estate, in my case, were always reinvested. So they would multiply and they would grow. So saving 10% of all you earn, controlling your expenses, learning how to make your money multiply. In my case, it was real estate. For some people, it might be investing in blue chip equities in the stock market, in an S&P 500 index fund, or in other blue chip securities. And you may have a special skill or knowledge that allows you that I'm not even aware of, that will allow you to make your money multiply in some other way. As long as the idea when you're making your money multiply, though, of course, is that capital preservation is key. You don't want to risk it. This isn't money to put into the Vancouver Stock Exchange, into a startup. This isn't money to put into a private equity deal or an angel investment. This is money you're going to put into the Royal Bank of Canada or Berkshire Hathaway or Apple or an S&P 500 index fund, money that you're going to put aside and invest in a way that a pension fund would invest, a wise investor who's investing for the long term.
I do B mortgages. So there's a firm that does B mortgages, and so they've got to buy in.
You understand that business, and you understand you have people that you trust that are involved.
Correct.
Yeah,
correct.
So making your money multiply. Save 10% of all you earn. Control your expenses. Make your money multiply. Invest in your own home. That's another principle as an entrepreneur. Now, as an entrepreneur, one thing that tends to happen is the entrepreneur buys the house goes up in value, the mortgage goes down.
Remortgages, takes the money and then takes the equity and puts it in the business.
Right. So that's a no-no. So in my case, the house was always in my wife's name. I happen to be married. Not every entrepreneur is married. But in my case, we always put the house in my wife's name in anticipation of the fact that the business I was running would likely go out of business, or I might get sued as a director of the company because I did something wrong. And I didn't want to have the one family asset that was the most important
risk
to us.
Management. There's nothing wrong with that.
Risk management is exactly what it is. And that is a big part of what being successful as an entrepreneur is understanding, and that there's nothing wrong with that. The idea of defending the family asset in that way, you're taking huge risks as an entrepreneur, and those risks certainly may pay off. They may not. Okay. Yeah. But if they do pay off, you're not only going to create some wealth for yourself, but you're going to stimulate employment. You're going to do all kinds of great things. There's all kinds of spin-offs that are great for the community and the economy at large. You're taking huge chances. So there's no reason, ethically, morally, or otherwise, why you shouldn't defend your family's asset by having that held, in your spouse's name, if you have a spouse. So to defend that asset that way, and to never borrow against that asset to be invested in your business, because owning your own business is the riskiest investment that you could possibly make. Investing in private equity deals or an angel deal is the riskiest thing you could. You've been around. You're an entrepreneur. You've seen them start. You've seen them fold. Okay, the vast majority of them, probably 90% of them, after 5 years, are going to be gone. That's just the way it is. But if you're successful, if you work really hard and you stay in the game, eventually one of them may become very successful. But along the way, some of them won't.
There's a few Kodaks in there. There's a few Blockbusters in there, right?
Right. And for you to sacrifice your financial future and your family's financial future, and to put and to take your spouse's life and your children's life and sacrifice that on the altar of your business, I don't think it is healthy for your family. It's not healthy for you, right?
The greatest, I think, when I'm listening to you talk here, there's a couple of things that pop up for me that are values and other lessons. One is that stop for a minute and think about going all in, right? There's a lot of consequences in risk management. I think that's the right after direction when we go into a company, right, that's got explosive growth or doing a turnaround. The first thing that we look is direction, right? What's your purpose? What are your core values? What are your brand promises? Are you aligned? Okay, great. The second thing is what the priorities. Everybody puts goals. We kind of turn that around, saying, okay, well, what's the risk associated with this business? And the first thing that I see 9 times out of 10 when a CEO has been the founder is that I was like, oh shit, if you disappear,
Yeah.
either the company's going to go down or we're going to have to backfill with $200,000 US to find somebody of your equal value that can manage your business. I'm like, oh shit. And then there's a ripple effect that goes into, and then managing costs. My version. So when I think of what I need to do, I do behavioral based kind of action tracking is healthy, wealthy, and wise, right?
Yeah.
The wealthy for me is a simple equation: make more than you spend.
Yeah.
Right. And just bring in more money, even if it's $1. You're always thinking, okay, how much did I earn? I want to underspend to what I'm earning. And in simple ways, right? So same thing with the company.
Yeah.
What do you need to do to survive 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, a year, whatever? I think that those two lines is wealth and wisdom of don't put all in, because how many people, like how many entrepreneurs do you know, you've got a few years on me, that are divorced because of shitty business decision making?
The stories are endless. Yeah.
And so I think there's a lot of value in what you're saying is in, hey, hold on a second, segregate, reconcile. So sorry for interrupting. We were in lesson 3 or 4.
Martin, I mean, your point is well taken. And at the end of the day, your business is not going to come visit you when you're in hospital.
It's
and
true.
when you're in ICU, in your latter, when you're old and gray, your business is not going to come and hang out with you. Okay. If you're a good parent, if you're a dedicated spouse, and you're a committed community member, people are going to come and visit you. You're going to have a life. Okay, so first and foremost, we have to decide what we're going to invest in. We're going to invest in a life. Okay, so life Inc. over here, and then your business over here. The business is going to change. Okay, maybe not. Maybe it's a business you're going to have forever. And a lot of entrepreneurs who start their first business, they think, and they get some success with it, they think that business is going to be around forever, and they're going to be the king of that castle forever. And you know what? The odd guy is, but it almost never happens, right? So the reality is, it comes and it goes, and it might fail. And if it doesn't, great for them. Okay. But the probabilities are that it will. Okay. So come to grips with that idea, and then work on Family Inc. Work on this treasure here, cultivating this, creating a foundation for the family, right? For your family's future and for your future. So when you go to bed at night, you could say to yourself, okay, well, business is not going quite well, but you know what? Our house is halfway paid off. We've got a few $100,000 in the bank. The kids are doing really well. I'm going to do my best to keep this business going. I'm going to go as far as I can, but I'm not going to invest all of this. Okay. I'm not going to risk all of this for that. I'll find another way. And if I can't, well, then you know what? It wasn't meant to be to begin with. And I'll start another day. And you're going to be able to think so much more clearly if your wife and your personal life and your community, the house you live in, and all the other aspects of your life are able to continue in a healthy way. So it's about living a financially healthy life. It's not necessarily about being a super rich person or anything else. It's about living in a financially realistic, disciplined, structured way. It's about adopting a financial worldview that's healthy, that will benefit you and your family. So making your money multiply, controlling your expenses, making your money multiply, investing in your own home, and then obviously always looking for ways, to increase your ability to earn. Right. And I mean, these are the golden rules that we talk about in Simple Wealth.
Can you show the book for the people who are watching on YouTube? Yeah. Let's put it up there. So there you go. Simple Wealth, 6 Proven Principles for Financial Freedom. David Ash.
Yeah.
There you go.
And I think that, for me, the greatest, the entrepreneurial experience is one of the greatest experiences there is. If you're wired that way, there's absolutely no life like it. You have the freedom. You have the ability to turn left, to turn right, to do something or to not do something. And if things go well, you have financial freedom, and that's great. And we landed on our feet, and the financial success we had ultimately in our business. Today, I own real estate mostly. We have commercial real estate. We own an ice hockey arena in Langley, the Sportsplex.
Oh no!
And
Nice.
a commercial properties, office buildings, and retail strip centers, and we own other types of real estate and other investments. So today I'm an investor. I'm not an active entrepreneur. The Sportsplex, the arena, has about 45 employees, but we have a general manager and runs that and all the rest of it. But the entrepreneurial life is a very satisfying life. And the only reason that the success that I have today, the only reason that's there is because we adopted these principles 30 years ago. A lot of people think, oh, he did really well in real estate, or he did really well in the last business that he was in. But none of what I did would have worked as well as it had if we hadn't embraced these ideas of always managing our risk, never allowing a particular investment or a business that we're invested in to take all of our success that we've had in another business or in our personal finances to suck it out again. So having a structure, having a financial worldview in place, systems and processes, and guidelines. And without that, you're kind of at the whim of the ocean of demands.
Yeah, for sure. What is, so when I think there's a valuable lesson I think a lot of people could learn when you were 28 and rock bottom. How did you, can you share how you crawl back up? Like I'm assuming there's some people who are listening who are at potentially the verge of there, right? And so they're saying, holy shit, what David and Martin are talking about, I'm almost there. I've put my equity, I've put my house, my business is struggling through COVID. Yeah. I don't know if I'm going to make it through.
Yeah.
So you got that bankruptcy. What did you do? Like, can you recall, can you tell their story and how you kind of inched your way back up?
Yeah. I mean, I'm a high school dropout, Martin. So my primary skill, my core competency was salesmanship. I was a salesman. I sold everything. I sold door-to-door sales. I ran telemarketing operations when telemarketing operations actually existed. They don't exist anymore.
A lot of listeners will go, what? Telemarketing?
Exactly. I'm glad I got out of that business 20 years ago. Went the way of the dodo bird. But I used to run these operations with room full of telephones, 25 people on the phone, calling people, selling stuff. So I was a sales guy, and I ran telemarketing operations and all kinds of direct sales operations. So when I went bankrupt, I went back to what I knew, which was running sales organizations. So first I ran sales organizations for someone else. So I had my own little businesses and then went bankrupt. So I said, okay, I'm going to have to go work for someone else or get a consultancy job as a consultant running someone else's sales operation. So I had to swallow some major humble pie. I had to get rid of my ego. Okay. I had to say, okay, I have no ego whatsoever. I've got to do what I got to do. Go and work wherever I got to work, okay, to make as much money as I can, to get back up on my feet, to seed my next entrepreneurial venture. And that for me was running different kinds of sales operations for other organizations, but as a consultant, always attempting to negotiate, the best compensation plan I could get. But but the crawling back, as you put it, was the embracing of these ideas that I read about in The Richest Man in Babylon. So my wife and I, she was a registered nurse at the time, so she continued to work as a nurse. I was 28, she was 26. So she's saving 10% of her nursing paycheck. I'm saving 10% of what I'm earning. And we bought our first little house out here in Surrey, in North Surrey, a little shack for 80 grand back then and 30 some odd years ago. It was a lowest income neighborhood, the roughest house in the roughest neighborhood in all of North Surrey. And we owned that house for 20 years. It went up in value. I refinanced it 3 different times. So I had no ego about, I had no right to have an ego. I haven't done anything that was special anyway. So you have to get out of yourself and do whatever it is. I drove used cars instead of driving fancier, financing, sports cars. I was driving $2,000 beaters. My wife and I were saving our 10% plus any extra money we could. every extra dollar we had, we'd buy another little rental house, keep working, buy another little rental house, maybe sell a house, keep working, save some more, and then just gradually, step by step, we clawed our way back up. And after 10 years, after 5 or 6 years, we had 50 grand in the bank. After 10 years, I was really back and rocking and rolling again in my world, right? And then I started a business that really went well. I joined EO, the entrepreneur in 1994. I joined the Entrepreneur Organization, and I was one of the first people in the payday loan business in all of Canada. And I started a payday loan company here in Canada that we expanded to the United States, and it took off like wildfire. We ended up with 500 employees and all over Canada and the United States, and issuing loans all over the globe. And so we did really well. Sold that business after 10 years, and then since then we've been a full-time investor. So
okay. So for what you're telling, if somebody's not there yet, so there's a listener who says, okay, well, I'm pretty darn close. So take a look at how to save, right? If you're in a negative cash flow, what do you do, right? So somebody's having a hard time get out of it, and they see their debt just absolutely ginormous. What kind of advice would you provide for an entrepreneur who's like, okay, I'm buried deep in debt. My business is still running. We're running at a deficit. I've got my second mortgage. What's kind of the recommendations that you would put forth?
So first of all, I can't give specific recommendations.
Guidelines. Yeah. Of course.
The picture you're painting for me is that this person is overwhelmed with debt.
Correct.
Debt,
yeah.
Right. Okay. So when I embraced these ideas that I read about in The Richest Man of Babylon, which I communicate in Simple Wealth, and I want to make it really clear here. The idea is that the 6 proven principles that I communicate in Simple Wealth are not my ideas. These are universal principles. They're timeless truths. Yes. They worked 100 years ago. They worked 1,000 years ago. Okay. So principle number 1, save at least 10% of all you earn, no matter what. So the day that you begin this new financial life, okay, I don't care how much you owe to anybody. Okay. The day you plant a flag and you say that my financial world is going to change. Okay. I don't care if you owe $10 million or $100 million. You plant the flag, you go to work. If you're in $500, you take $50 and you set it aside in a 10% bank account, and that's set aside for your future. Okay. Doesn't matter how much you earn. Okay.
Awesome.
And then every day you go to work and you think of ways to get out of this other debt, use all the magic tricks, all the hard work, all the strategies that you normally use. But no matter what, 10% of all you earn is yours to keep forever. Okay. Non-negotiable. And that's the toughest part of these principles that people have a hard time with. We've shared this idea with not thousands. Over the years, my wife and I would sit with friends who are struggling financially. And they say, well, what are you guys doing? I say, we talk about what we're doing. We're all excited about it. Yeah. We're young and we're enthusiastic. And we'd even buy them a copy of the little book. And we'd say, okay, we shared something good that's going to help our friends. We come back a year or two later, and they wouldn't have done it. And so this idea of saving 10% of all you earn, no matter what, is really hard for a lot of people to wrap their heads around, particularly if they're in debt. They say, well, how can I possibly begin to save 10% of all I earn if I owe the bank, or if I owe this or I owe that? Well, the reality is that when you start saving 10% of all you earn, something magical happens. You see a bank account with money you're saving that's going to begin to multiply for your future. You now become encouraged. So where you felt hopeless, you now feel hope. Okay.
Nice.
So now all of a sudden you say to yourself, well, I'm doing this for a reason. I'm working hard for a reason. Okay. I have a strategy. So now when you're presented with a financial decision, instead of saying, well, who cares? It doesn't matter anyway. I'm so in debt, whatever. Okay. You now look at that little bank and say, well, you know what?
I got $10 there. I got $20 there. I got $30 there.
But in 10 years, it's going to be a lot more. And and with compounding and proper investment strategies, eventually you'll be okay. You have a plan. You have a financial worldview that will bode well over the long term, for sure. Okay. But you got to plant the flag, and you got to believe in that idea. And something magical happens in terms of your attitude, your spirit, your ability to sort of say, okay, no matter what happens over here, even if I go even if I have to struggle over here for the next 5 or 10 years, at least we're moving forward. We're not
Correct.
only moving backwards. Right?
No, that's good. That's good. I mean, that is a lot of, and this is a CEO trade that so, the show is called really What CEOs Talk About. And lately it's been entrepreneurial focused of when you're a founder, you have to wear the CEO hat. And
Yeah.
too many founders forget that. They give themselves the title
Yeah.
or chief creative officer, do this, but there's a reason why you have chief is you're in charge. Executive is that you bode direction of, or the direction of the action, and officer is your name is on the dotted line legally. So too many founders get caught up in the details in the business and forget to remove themselves or put themselves at 10,000 feet and go, okay, I'm looking at the organization. Because that's what a CEO would do. You hire somebody from the outside. The first thing they go is like, what's your 90-day plan? Well, the first 30 days is learning. The second 30 days is, kind of defining. And the third one is really developing an implementation plan. So 30, 60, 90. Why aren't you doing that as a founder or entrepreneur for your business? Why aren't you putting the CEO hat on and saying, how will I mitigate risk, pardon me. And that's the one thing, like you said, the entrepreneurs have ADHD, right? Oh, shiny thing. Oh, shiny thing. Oh.
But, and the other thing too, Martin, I think that, and I touch on this in the book, so these ideas that I just shared with you, save 10% of all you earn, control your expenses, all that. These are all simple ideas. Like, I mean, this is not rocket science. Like you don't have to you have to go to university to understand this.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So why do most people not apply it? That's the question. And the
question
is that there's a psychology around money. Okay. So we all have, something called a money script. Okay. So we all have a story that we tell ourselves about money. And that story that we're telling ourselves, is inherited. Okay. So depending on the family you're from, okay, if you come from a poor family, let's say, or if your parents went through the Depression or whatever, they might have a money avoidance script where they're afraid of money, right? They think that all rich people are greedy, right?
Yeah.
And that money for them is, represents anxiety. And there's other people that might have a money worship script where they think that their self-worth, and their net worth are the same thing, right? Mm-hmm. So there's these different views of money, different stories we tell ourselves. And the thing about these stories is that we don't even really know the story that we're telling ourselves. So we have these CEOs that you're talking about a minute ago. Mm-hmm. So this guy, okay, has a psychology. He has a view of the world and money that he's operating with that he doesn't really probably even know, that's informing a lot of his decisions. Okay. Mm-hmm. And understanding what your money script is. So for example, in my case, I was raised in a family with a major money avoidance script. So my parents were blue collar people. My dad was a high school dropout, worked on the loading dock. My mother had, a similar level of education, both from poor families in Montreal. And in their case, they had a deep money avoidance script. They had no money. They were tenants. I was raised my parents were paycheck to paycheck. We lived in rental accommodation my whole childhood. And so money for them was fear. It was a fear base. So that I was raised in a family that had a poverty mentality and what you'd refer to as a money avoidance script. My parents believed that rich people, were greedy, and probably not nice, and that money was only about anxiety, nothing else. So I rejected that poverty mentality when I was a young man, and I said, you know what, I don't want that life. I want to have a life filled with, opportunities, and I don't want to embrace that. I saw a better life on the other side of the tracks. However, okay, as I worked hard and as things turned around, as I applied the principles that I've talked about, and things started getting really, really good, I found myself struggling with this Jekyll and Hyde side of my personality. Like, while I was doing really well, and I could afford to join a golf club if I wanted to, or a yacht club if I wanted to, I would drive by a yacht club and, make snide remarks about how the people in that yacht club think they're better than everybody else because they're snobby, because they're in the yacht club because they think they're better than everybody else. Or I look at the people at the golf club and think at the golf course and think that they think they're better. I had a very blue collar chip on my shoulder, okay, thinking that people who were wealthy, okay, thought they were better than people who weren't.
Mm-hmm.
Yet I was at a stage in my life where I was wealthier than most of the people that I was judging for being wealthy. So how much sense does this make? My wife is sitting next to me, looking at me. I'd make these snide remarks every now and again, and they just pop out. And I don't know where they would come from. They're completely illogical. My wife would look at me, and go like, "Why do you say that? Like you don't even know who these people are." And I go, "Oh, well, they think they're better." So there's this little boy in me coming out from the other side of the tracks, this inherited money script, which is a negative attitude around money and around people who have money. So there's all these layers. I'm giving that as an example of you may come from a family with a totally different background, but you're going to have baggage associated, and your CEOs that you're consulting with, that you're working with, have this baggage, and it's like it's out there, and it's controlling their financial decisions. So when you say nonsensical behavior going on, there's something deep that's going on behind there, and that's worthy of investigation.
Absolutely, and that's
not figured out. Nothing is really going to happen in your financial life. Right?
It's crazy that you say that, because that's what we're talking about on a different show. Is okay. So what kind of questions are you asking yourself, right? How are you stepping outside of who you are to look at yourself in the third person and to say, okay, well, let's ask 1,000 questions. Who am I? How am I doing this? Am I doing the right things? And yet we think operationally, but we don't necessarily think financially. And that is a great moment, a great learning. I have a similar kids, 10 years ago, maybe something like that. We're at the sports check. I just dropped $500, $600 on my kids' shoes and clothes for school and all that good stuff. And I see these Adidas, retro Adidas, that when Run DMC were out without shoelaces, I was a kid and I couldn't afford those. Like I'm the baby of the family, and I had hand-me-downs all the time. So anyways, so I look at those and they're like $99. They're not even $300. They're not even $400. They're not even $100, right? Yeah. And I think they had $10 discount or something, like $89. Yeah. So I pick them up, I look at them, and I tell my wife, "Oh wow, these are the shoes that I love." And I put it back, and I go back to the shoes again, and she's like, "What are you doing?" It's like, "Oh, I really love those shoes." Like when I was 12, 13 years old, I can't remember the age. I was like, I really wanted these shoes, right? She's like, "Well, just buy them." And I was like, "No way. They're like $89. And like, she's like, "Okay, well, hold on a second. Put things in perspective here. Yeah. You just spent $500 on kids' stuff for school that they're going to grow out of in 6 months. And you don't want to buy a pair of shoes that you've been waiting for 30 years. Like, what's wrong with you?" Yeah. But I always laughed. I said, we were so poor it's funny because I come from the East Coast and we moved to Montreal. And so we were poor. We couldn't even afford the R at the end of poor. And so, you make fun of it, right? We grew up in the train yards. We'd steal stuff. We'd raid gardens and get all the vegetables and sell them to restaurants in a box for $2.
You and I would have been hanging out if I'd been.
Oh, A.L. Van Houten, the coffee house. We'd steal coffee beans, try to roast them and sell them for $1 at the door. Oh my goodness gracious. But anyways, it's so true that financial bias that you've put on yourself. I still have that frugal mentality. Yeah. Now that's a learning that I've had. Thank you very much, David. That's because I think that is something that we should look at financials in, because process. And I want to come kind of full circle with all of this, is that what you're doing is you're setting a process. Mm-hmm. Just follow the goddamn process. Yeah. There is no.
Yeah, exactly.
There is no, everybody knows, there is no instruction manual or guidebook to be a parent or to be an entrepreneur. Yeah. But this one is a simple process. Just follow the goddamn process. Yeah. Just follow.
Exactly. And you've got, when it comes to success principles, whether it's in business or with your personal finances, you've got principles and you've got tactics. As a consultant, Martin, you're probably often asked, what should I do? Right?
Correct.
The what should I do is usually a tactic, right?
Correct.
Like you should go to this bank, or you should go and get financing over here, or you should, hire this guy or fire that guy, or close this or open that, whatever. Those are tactics. What a book like this offers are principles. So the principles are like a compass. Mm-hmm. it's a guidepost. So it's a framework that allows you to make decisions, tactical decisions. Okay, but it's not tactics. So the principles give you a worldview. Okay, in this case, a financial worldview. So the idea of saving, controlling your expenses, learning how to make your money multiply, those kinds of things. When you embrace those ideas firmly as principles and use them as guiding principles, then all the tactics, the ways you make your money multiply, that's a tactic, right? And all the other things, they all present themselves, and they're all so unique because all of our lives are unique. Our capacity to earn is unique. The type of jobs we do is unique. Our personal goals, our talents are all unique. So tactics are so individual. So to your point, these ideas, not mine, but I've re-articulated them here, give somebody, and in my case, they worked, give you a financial worldview that you can embrace that will force up the answers. These principles, if you embrace these simple principles, will force you to think about the necessary tactics. So when you're confused, when you're overwhelmed, you retreat to the principle, and the principle will drive you and guide you to ask the right questions, as you do as a consultant. You're always asking questions, I guess, and helping people come up with the right answers, which are the tactics.
The choice is everything, right? So when you break down humanity, it's painful or gainful, it's a yes or no. What you choose to do is go forward or stop. So these principles are based out of human emotions and thought process. What does the principle, which value does the principle point to, right? And so you're saying reconcile or create a very distinct between family and work, right? Because in the 21st century, it's not, we're not going out and harvesting anymore. We're not, hunting and fishing and providing for the family. There's a distinct, alleyway between family and work now, and that needs to be reconciled is the word that I absolutely love. If we bring it back to the title, it's not about balance. No. It's not, because balance, like sometimes you have to bust your ass, right? There's years where I've busted my ass for 24 months and profitability went through the roof, and that was well. And there's years where I barely worked a month and a half in the whole year, right? So, but reconciling, I think, is a better word, is you're connecting both ends into saying, well, what have I spent? What have I earned? And you mash that in that family value of being a whole person. That's powerful. So let's talk about you for a sec.
Sure.
You've learned a lot, and we've learned about, because I usually ask the question, okay, what one piece of material that changed your life? You've shared that. Now, as an experienced entrepreneur and investor and CEO of your company, and I'm sure multiple other ones, what are you working on right now? What are you looking to improve as of now?
Well, I'm a novice author. I'm promoting a book.
Shit, I'm a kid when it comes to this, right? So
I'll be honest with you. I mean, things have gone so well for us, Martin. I mean, I've been a full-time investor for the last 15 years. And, so my focus for the last 15 years has been to learn how to become a full-time investor, because as entrepreneurs, we learn how to leverage human resources, right? And we learn how to also sometimes leverage, financial resources, learn how to borrow money and use that money to grow our business. But the skills and the talents that you have as an entrepreneur, the skills that you bring to bear as an entrepreneur, which is, unrealistic optimism, your charisma, your creativity, your hard work, all of those things are great as an entrepreneur. But so the last 15 years for me, though, has been to learn how to become an investor. And all of those things, my charisma doesn't move the needle on the S&P 500 index fund.
Really? No.
No matter how creative I think, it doesn't increase the value of the piece of real estate that I bought last month. If I invest in a deal, it doesn't, me being smart or creative, if I don't have control of the deal, if I invest in someone else's business, doesn't mean a hill of beans. So my thing this last 15 years is learning how to take the wealth that we've created over the years and learn how to make that multiply. And for me, real estate has been my foundation since the beginning. I've always invested in real estate. So I have a level of expertise there. I wouldn't call myself an expert, but I'd say that I have a level of confidence and, operational expertise in that area. But I've moved since then into other areas, investing in publicly traded securities and other types of investments. And really, the last 15 years for me has been figuring out what I don't want to invest in. And I've tried everything. I've done angel investing, and with angel investing, sorry for anybody who's raising money on angel now, but angel investing, as an investor, your reward is in heaven. That's why they call it angel investing. The term. Do you know where the term angel investing came from?
No, I don't actually.
Okay. The origin of the term angel investing was back in the day, a couple hundred years ago. The patrons that financed theatrical endeavors. So if play was being produced, a wealthy patron, some wealthy local business guy or a royal person or whatever would stroke the check to pay for and back the theatrical production in their community, and they were referred to as an angel investor. So that's where that term comes from. And very often, of course, these plays would go nowhere. And
no money would ever be.
But he was a patron of the arts, right?
Yeah.
An angel. So when you invest as an angel investor, I've discovered that you're just really, your reward is in heaven. Now, don't get me wrong. I think if you're really good at it and you make a business of being an angel investor, you might be able to make
your conversion rate might be bigger. Yeah.
But man, I tell you, you're working for it. It's not a passive investment. You got to invest in a lot of those deals for one of them to come through, and even if one of them comes through, to wrestle your
loss. Yeah.
The money that you've been promised, to get that out of them again after dealing with VCs and all the other stuff. Forget about it. So anyway, private equity, investing in other people's businesses that I don't run. I've tried that. For me, that hasn't worked. I've tried limited partnerships. That hasn't worked. I've lost money in more creative ways than you could shake. So I've spent the last 15 years making a lot of mistakes. This last 8 years or so, not so many mistakes, because I kind of eliminated a lot of them.
Your do not list is well established.
Exactly. And the thing too, and this is, I think, an important point for most CEOs or investors who are starting out or whatever, that piece of advice that I learned, and I think it's a solid one, is that, I've made investments that have really hurt. I've put $1 million into a golf course development simply because the thing was being, I didn't know why I did it, frankly. It was the guy running it was a hockey player, and he had no background in running a real estate development program. It turned out he was a fraudster, and I lost all my money. So when I looked at that decision, I asked myself, well, why did I do it? This is 14 years ago. And the reason, if I had to be really honest with myself, the reason I did it was because of ego, pride. I felt it was really cool because a lot of the investors in the deal were professional hockey players, and I'd get invited to these investor meetings, and I felt like I was a lucky guy, yada, yada. And I didn't really know anything about investing in other people's businesses at that time. I was new at it. So probably 12, 13 years ago at least. But anyway, so that really stung. When you invest $1 million in someone else's business and you discover the money was completely misappropriated, it hurts. So you kind of go, okay, well, I worked really hard for that money and I got completely taken advantage of. But why did I get taken advantage of? I got taken advantage of because I let myself get taken advantage of.
Exactly. You weren't diligent. Yeah.
Right. Because I didn't know what I was doing. There's no way I should have invested that amount of money that way with that guy, period. I'd never do it today. But what I would do, though, as much as that stung, and it really stung when it happened, is I would pull that bad decision out every now and again, and I would dwell on it. And I would recommend anybody, because we make a lot of mistakes as entrepreneurs, and now for me as an investor, is I pull out my biggest mistakes every now and again, and I dwell on them. I'll pull it out and I'll sit there and I'll think about, like, why the heck did I do that? And it hurts because I feel foolish. I feel stupid. I feel taken advantage of. I feel all of these emotions around it. And examining myself and why I made that stupid decision and reliving the pain associated with it.
Pain is a great motivator.
Because I say, what the heck? Why did I do that? Then the self-talk is, you dummy. Why did you? And it's because you were prideful. It's because you were this. It was because you were that. And then I say, and then that reinforces my commitment not to make that kind of a dumb decision again. So revisit your mistakes. You don't learn much from success. You learn a lot from your failures. So, so make sure to don't live in them, but every now and again pull one out and live in it for a little while and ask yourself how that happened, why it happened, and resolve not to do it again. Right?
It's in behavioral based business that I call it. So for every process that there's a system and behaviors are simple. They're painful or gainful. And most people, the school is learned through a gainful methodology. But as you and I grew up, you don't have money. How do you learn? Oh, well, shit, if I get, through pain drives decision, right? So if you say, holy shit, I am not touching that stove again. I am not touching anywhere close to an investment that has golf, hockey, or anything else. No. But then, analyzing the situation, the failure in itself is a learning, saying, okay, not all hockey players are shysters. Not all golf courses are bad investments. You're like, okay, let me rethink that, right? I did look like a fool. I did do this. I mean, I went in business with somebody that, again, same thing. Like, oh, I'll help you out. Yeah. No. And
well, in terms of who I am today, my biggest thing today is fun. What I do today, frankly, Martin, has nothing to do with making money. I mean, I manage my investments.
Of course.
My heart really now, as I said earlier, I'm in my 60s. We've been very blessed. Things are going incredibly well. So now it's about trying to affect change. Using whatever I've learned. I've written this book. Really to make sure there's a record for my kids, for the next generation and the generations behind them. Doing whatever I can. There's zero money in writing a book. I have it self-published. It cost me money. I spent 2 years writing it. Then I have to pay money to have it printed and published. And then I pay money to have it marketed. So there's zero money in it as a novice author. But, if I've sold 12 or 1,300 books so far in the first couple of months, the idea is we're going to continue to talk about it like this. And for every single person that picks up this book and reads it, I know that, there's a potential that someone just like me will embrace these ideas and it will change their life. And, one of the big things we get a lot out of in our life, my wife and I get a lot out of in our life today, is we're able to give back a lot. We spend a lot of our time investing in various good nonprofit groups, transitional housing projects, feeding, refugees and supporting different kind of aid programs around the world in our community. And it's an absolute blessing to be able to do that. And, so for me, being able to do things, use the financial resources we have to make our community a better place, to make the world around us a better place, and to now use some of my knowledge, hopefully, because as you well know, knowledge is the power, right? Mm-hmm. It's those thoughts are things. Thoughts are things. And coming from where you and I come from, we had no things. So our thoughts have had to be things, and they've transformed our lives. I mean, who would have thought that the guy running around in that train yard would end up, sitting where you're sitting today, or the guy that I am be sitting where I'm sitting today. There's no way anybody that knew me back then would have ever thought in a million years that I would be, probably alive.
I agree. 21? What's that? No, I'm with you. I help out an organization called Mission Possible, and Mission Possible brings people from the East End of Vancouver back into the work. And again, for me, it's about time. Time is the biggest resource, and so investing my time and helping those guys out is
awesome.
Yeah. David, thank you so very much for being on the show. It was dynamic. Look at that. An hour has gone by and we could still probably chat for another hour, an hour and a half. So thank you very, very much. Much appreciated. And with that being said, I'm assuming you're on LinkedIn. Can people reach out? I mean, I'm going to buy a couple of copies of your book. I'm going to help put money back into your pocket, my friend.
I appreciate that. As a novice investor or writer, I should say, I appreciate the support. So,
no, for sure.
Really, sincerely, enjoy it yourself if you do read it. But anybody, the next time is your friend when it comes to creating wealth. So for the next generation, you have young people in your life that might benefit from it. I tell you, if they embrace these ideas young, they'll end up okay. And the distance between the rich and the poor, and it's harder today. It's always been incredibly hard to get ahead in life, always will be. But it's harder today than it was for us 20 or 30 years ago, for sure, the way the system is. So they got to take responsibility for their finances and their financial future more today than ever before. So,
and it's never too late to start, right? So as you've mentioned before, there's put the flag in the ground, put the line in the sand, do whatever you need to do.
To start doing the right things.
That's right. With that said, thank you very much, David, for being on the show. It was great. My name is Martin Hunter. I am the host of What CEOs Talk About. And this time I'm not forgetting, please like, subscribe, because my marketing team always gives me a hard time. He said, you forgot to ask. I was like, okay. With that said, thank you very much, folks. You enjoy your day. Thank you.
Thank you, Martin.
Thanks for tuning in to What CEOs Talk About. Make sure to click subscribe to get notified about future episodes, or check us out at www.whatceostalkabout.com.